Good evening. I'd like to call to order the June 20th, 2011 Lake Washington School District Board of Directors meeting. And all board members are present and have just come from a work session on one of our most favorite topics, budgets, and preparing for the budget for the upcoming year. Interesting times ahead of us. So I will entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, motion, the agenda is approved as printed before you, and we have a recognition this evening.
Great, thanks, Jackie. A number of years ago, we had a proposal by the Facilities Department to have a person come on staff, Chuck Collins, and it was supported by Puget Sound Energy, in order to work with us to save costs through energy conservation. I think at the time I was skeptical and thought it was a good idea, but I was skeptical. And what we found over the last number of years is that Chuck Collins has paid off in spades. He has brought to our district innovation and cost savings over and over and over again. And so tonight, Forrest Miller is going to come and recognize Chuck for both an award and also the work that he has done for our district. So, Forrest.
Thank you. I wanted to introduce you to Chuck Collins. It's my privilege, and I'm very proud to be able to work with him. He did start with the district in about 2005 as a contract employee, and he manages our resource conservation program, which really has the responsibility of oversight of our utilities. And that includes electricity, natural gas, water, sewer, recycling, and garbage. This evening, though, we want to take the opportunity to recognize him because he has just been named the National Association of Energy Engineers 2011 Renewable Energy Innovator of the Year for Region 5. That's a little long, that's a long title. I'd like to see that plaque, by the way. And that Region 5 covers the entire West Coast states as well as the state of Arizona. It's a great honor for him to receive this award, and it's very well deserved. It kind of notes the caliber of person that Chuck is and the value that he is to us as an organization. He has truly shaped our resource conservation program and made it what it is today. And all of it with the intent to make sure that there's monies that are not going to operational costs, but instead are diverted over to the classroom where it's really, really needed. It is safe to say, in my opinion, that our resource conservation program is the best in the state and even beyond the state. Without question, it's the best. So let me give you a couple of statistics. Since Chuck has been working here, and since 2006, the kilowatts of electricity per square foot is down about 18% in terms of usage. And that's during the school year. That number goes up to it's down 36% during the summer months. Natural gas usage is down by 8%. Water is down by 60% in terms of usage. And trash service is down about 30% in terms of costs. So how do they do this? Well, the RCM group, which also includes Jed Reynolds here in the audience, uses a three-prong approach, and that is accountability or accounting oversight. They look at the bills, make sure that we're being charged appropriately. Behavior is the second focus because it really takes people to be able to switch off lights and turn off water faucets and those kind of things in order for things to be appropriate. So they're working with us on programming and behaviors. And thirdly, he's been working with us in terms of capital projects and initiatives, which is very innovative for us. In total, we are saving right now approximately over $1.5 million in a year, a single year, in terms of energy costs for the district. I also really congratulate Chuck because he is a very future thinker and very innovative. We have become the school district, how do you say that for our PVs?
State leader.
Okay, we're the state leader in terms of photovoltaics, which is solar panels. We have more installation of solar panels than any other school district in the state, and we're going to have the biggest solar installation at Finn Hill Junior High School in the state. At a single building. In addition to that, we're doing things like putting LED parking lot lights in, which very few school districts are doing these days, and so many other types of innovations to help control our utility costs. So I wish that you would join me in recognizing Chuck as the National Association of Energy Engineers 2011 Renewable Energy Innovator of the Year for Region 5 Award winner.
Hey, Chuck, would you mind just making a couple of comments on your work here?
Sure, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to say a couple things this fall.
I don't think it is, yeah.
Thanks, Forrest. Thank you, Chip, for the opportunity to say a few words. It's all about budget. I'm not trying to save the planet. I'm not trying to do those things. It's all about budget for us and money saved. Education is the only reason that I'm standing here, so it's the least that I can do in my profession to give back to education and hope to create more of me around. So anyway, that's all I want to say. This award is less about me than the team I work with. Forrest Miller is an outstanding individual, and Jed Reynolds, I couldn't imagine working with a better team. So thank you. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Chuck.
I was just going to add that based on my work at the county, which has also been trying to do some work with energy conservation, Chuck is well known, and I echo all the sentiments expressed tonight. Good job.
Yeah, thank you. I view the conservation work similar to going on a diet. You hate going on a diet, and you know when you go on a diet, you got to count calories. And so we are on an energy diet, and we're counting the calories, but after we lose the weight because we're on the diet, we're really happy we did it. So thank you for putting us on an energy diet, Chuck.
Thank you very much, and congratulations from all of us. Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
Okay, public comment. Do you have anybody over there, Diane? Okay. Anybody that didn't have an opportunity that's in the audience that wanted to speak to the board? Don't see any. Okay, I'll move on to our consent agenda then and entertain a motion for approval of the consent agenda.
So move.
Second.
Okay, Doug moved, Nancy second. Chip, poll the board, please.
Chris?
Yes.
Nancy? Jackie?
Yes?
Doug?
Yes.
Ravi?
Yes.
One thing that was pointed out in a question in the consent agenda was the difference in cost between the Sandburg and Keller school replacement projects, and I just wanted to point out those differences in costs are primarily due to scope. So we're building Sandburg for $550 and Keller for $450, and Sandburg also includes Discovery School, which is why there's a difference in those base bid costs. So I just wanted to point that out tonight. Also, under tab 16, I wanted to point out our donations for the evening. We have a total in donations of $16,110, and wanted to thank those individuals and organizations that are donating freely to the district. We have a $1,500 donation from the Lake Washington Schools Foundation to Evergreen Junior High School to support the classroom and enrichment grant that they wrote. $1,713 from the Evergreen Junior High PTSA to Evergreen Junior High School to support Nature Vision, purchase library books, and provide a Kindle grant. A $2,000 donation from Rosa Parks PTSA to Rosa Parks Elementary School to purchase drama supplies, a script, and licensing to support their school plays. $1,246 donation from the Sandburg PTSA to Sandburg Elementary School to provide teacher stipends for their homework club. $8,213 donation from the Lakeview PTSA to Lakeview Elementary School to purchase some instructional materials and a teacher stipend for music and support their teacher training program. And lastly, a $1,437 donation from the Lake Washington Toddler Group to John Muir Elementary School to support their Play and Learn grant, again for a total of $16,110.
And I'd also like to add my thank yous to all our folks that donate from our community, our PTSAs and other organizations. Certainly much appreciated that they do that and help out in the various programs and buildings. So Non-consent agenda. Speaking of our favorite topic of the moment,
Great, thanks.
budget.
Thanks, Jackie. Under tab 17 is our first reading of our 2011-2012 budget. From a process standpoint, each year we bring to the board for your consideration an annual budget in June. Then there is a time for the public to comment and get you comments on the budget. We will do a hearing at our next regular board meeting, and then you will then, of course, ultimately approve the budget that you choose to adopt. From an internal standpoint, what we do with the budget is each year we have an advisor group called DART, Decision Advisory Representative Team, which is an advisory group to me, which is represented by elected principals and building administrators as well as elected central office folks. And they give input on the budget. And we look at, of course, expenditures and revenues. Is the budget increasing or decreasing? And there's multiple sources of revenue, but the two big ones that we talk about is what's the state picture? What are we getting from the state? And what are we getting from the local constituency, the local levy? And then our expenditures. And we ask for input from our constituencies on what we should be doing about our programs, adding or cutting, making program adjustments, and then that information comes to me from DART, and then I ultimately will make a recommendation to you for your consideration. So tonight I'm going to ask Barbara to walk through the budget from a macro perspective, revenues and expenditures, cuts and adds from a programmatic standpoint. And then, again, you'll have the opportunity to solicit feedback from the public and ultimately vote on the budget later in the year. Barbara.
Thank you very much. Diane is passing around a copy of the PowerPoint. All right, I'm pleased tonight to present the budget, the proposed 2011-12 budget. We've shared with the board earlier in a work session some of the details behind this budget and gave them the opportunity to dig a little deep in it. This will provide more of an overview and get into the other funds, the capital funds and the other non-general fund. This year, every year I seem to come up here and say it was a difficult budget year. Well, it has been for the last 5 years or so. The state not only made mid-year cuts this year, but had a very late legislative session. But the good news is we have a budget document in time for the board meeting tonight. So thanks to the hard work of my team, my budget staff, Lynn Pike in particular, helps me greatly in getting this document put together. So for the third year in a row, the state has made cuts and shifted more responsibility to the local taxpayers. And you'll also see, even with the state cuts, and I'll be going through this in detail, that both revenues and expenditures did increase, however, but primarily that's due to enrollment and levy funds. So I want to first talk about the documents that you were given. We provide a user-friendly, what we call a user-friendly budget document in draft format. And that is something that we give to every building during the year. It's a really good document for public and for parents to use. It provides a very concise summary, mostly focuses on the general fund. The other document you have in front of you is what we call the detailed budget document by fund. So it provides additional details and is in a more user-friendly format than the state format. You don't have this document in front of you right now. I mentioned this, the state, due to the lateness of the legislature, the F-195, which is the official document that you will adopt, was not ready in time for us to get that to you. We have begun work on it, and we'll have that to you prior to June 30th. But that is the official document that you will adopt and is in a consistent format across the state. So I will get started. So I'll start with an overview of each fund, and then we'll get into more details. We're responsible for $529 million for next year. The general fund, which is the day-to-day operations of the district, comprise $231 million. The Associated Student Body Fund, which is the extracurricular activities in each school, $4.2 million. Debt Service Fund, which provides for the redemption and payment of principal and interest on our bonds, $38 million. Capital Projects Funds, $255 million, which is where all our modernization and tech levy and facility levy dollars are. And our Transportation Vehicle Fund, which provides for the purchase of additional buses. So our Associated Body Fund, not much change from last year. Beginning fund balance of almost $600,000. Revenues which come from sports and sales and fundraisers of $4.1 million. Expenditures for athletics, general student body, $4.2 million, for an ending fund balance of a little over $500,000. Each school does develop their own budget. That is submitted and consolidated to come up with one district budget. The Debt Service Fund provides, as I mentioned earlier, for the redemption and interest on bonds. Revenue comes from our levy and interest earnings. We're projecting revenue of almost $38 million with a beginning fund balance of $5.5 million and expenditures of $38 million to pay for the principal and interest, so an ending fund balance of $5 million. Capital Projects Fund. That is, we're bringing in revenues from our bonds and levies, and this year we just had, in 2011, we had a new levy that the voters approved for the STEM school and the Redmond High and Eastlake additions, and those are included in our revenues. We also are budgeting $36 million for the 6th bond sale of our Phase 2 modernization. The voters approved $436 million in bonds in 2006, and this is the 6th sale of that. Provides contingency. We will determine the appropriate amount and timing later in the fall. Again, this is just to get it in the budget. So total revenues for debt service is $77 million. And then we have transfers to the general fund of $6.6 million. This is a state accounting requirement. We're required to spend our tech training and software and subscriptions out of the general fund and transfer the capital levy dollars to the general fund. So that's a transfer out. So we're spending $255 million, and I have another slide that will provide details on that, for an ending fund balance in capital of $31.6 million. Okay. My keyboard stopped working. There we go. So the major projects and capital projects, this is our big year for spending. We have completion of Lake Washington High School, Finn Hill Jr., and that are opening this fall, and then completion of Muir, Sandberg, and Keller that will open during the year and by fall of 2012. And then we'll begin construction on ICS Bell, Rush, and Rose Hill Jr. As I mentioned, we also have expenditures budget in this budget for our 2000 approved levy projects, the STEM school and the Redmond High and Eastlake addition. And then we have ongoing expenditures for our 2010 levy projects. We have under building systems, we have we have just some roofing, some flooring items. We have $3 million in state-funded energy grants that we are spending money on. We have some portable projects under school and program improvements. Athletic and play fields, we are doing a lot of parking lot paving and Inglewood gym floor. And then just the ongoing tech equipment, tech levy equipment, software and training expenditures. So Transportation Vehicle Fund, again, revenue is provided carryover from our levy that was voted in 2000, and we continue to receive state depreciation funds. That was a little up in the air with the legislature this year, but they came through and made no changes to that. So our revenues, state depreciation funds, and investment earnings. We're budgeting $300,000 in expenditures. Right now, we don't have any plans to purchase buses next year, but that we need to provide some contingency in the budget in case those plans change. All right, so we're now moving in. The rest of the time will be spent on the general fund budget. And I'll give you an overview of the proposed budget, and then we'll talk about key changes in both revenue and expenditure. So the main overview is we're starting the year, our goal is to start the year with $17.8 million in fund balance. We'll have revenues of $229 million, and that includes the transfer that we've talked about from capital. Our expenditures will be $231 million for an ending fund balance of $15.9. As you recall, last year the state required us to categorize our ending fund balance in more detail. So there is a new line item for our committed minimum fund balance policy, which is the 5% the board requires. That's the $11.4 million. And then our ending fund balance of 15.9 is slightly higher than that, about 1.9% higher than the required, and that unassigned is really a reserve and maintained cushion to deal with future state cuts and also any future COLA and pension impacts. So I'll start with an overview of enrollment changes and then move into specific revenue and expenditures. So enrollment, as you know, enrollment is a key driver of our revenue and expenditures. In this year's budget, we are budgeting 547 more students than last year. We experienced most of that growth in the 10-11 school year, and then we're projecting a smaller increase in 11-12. As you can see from the slide, the majority of that growth was in elementary. We've been experiencing growth in our elementaries for the last few years, and those students are going to start moving ahead into our secondary schools. As a reminder, we are very conservative when we budget enrollment. Our enrollment usually does come in over our planned budget, and we budget conservatively, so we are not spending money that we don't have, and we want to wait until we actually know that those kids are coming before we put those into our plans. In addition to that 547 growth, though, we do budget contingency, so the budget includes another 400 students in case we do see more growth than planned, and we budget both the revenue for those 400 students and the expenditures for those 400 students, but those monies will not be spent if those students do not appear. So one of the key changes this year is we have a new state funding formula. The funding formula has not changed since 1977, and 2 years ago the legislature passed House Bill 2261 to establish a change in the funding formula. They put committees together and to try to come up with a process for this new funding formula. A year later, they passed House Bill 2076 in the 2010 legislative session, and that established the new funding formula. And that funding formula was established to begin in 11-12. Now, 2261 had goals in it to have very small class sizes and additional staffing and additional funding. Well, as you know, there is no additional funding in the states, but they went ahead and changed the funding formula anyway, but provided no new funding. So it's an equal revenue funding formula, and then with the long-term goal of being able to enhance that funding formula. So new structure, no new money. And so just some examples of what's changed. It changed the certified allocation from a ratio to more class size based. We used to get 46 per thousand in the higher level grades, and now the ratio is more of a goal for class size. And again, this is an allocation model only. This does not tell you how to, this is just a way for the legislature to fund money to schools. It is not a way, it does not demand that schools actually staff that way or provide staff in any of these categories. The other thing the formula does, it provides new categories for cert and classified staff. As example, counselors, we were just funded on certificated staff in the old model. Well, now they've added categories for counselors. We were funded just on one lump sum for classified staff. Now they've added categories for custodians and technology. Again, that doesn't mean they've added dollars. It's the same money, just broken out in different categories. So we used to have 5 categories of staffing, and the new model has about 20 categories. Ongoing, there's still, the state has levy work groups that are working on the levy formula. They have data governance work groups working on data, and they also have a compensation work group. So there's more changes expected in the next few years. The other, so let me just point out too, they've changed what we used to call our NERCs, non-employee related costs. Those are all the non-salary. They've changed the terminology to MSOC, so we all have to learn new language and practice that for maintenance, supplies, and operating costs. They also used to give us money per the CERT staff. We generated, the staffing formula generated, and now it's an amount. So we used to get $10,000, for example, for each staff member. Now we get $500 per student. So they've changed how they allocate the money. And I'll say one more time, no new revenue. The other transportation, the other funding formula change is transportation has a new funding formula. It's based on an expected cost model and is supposed to create greater equity in state funding. They've implemented it to start also in the fall of 2011 with no new revenues really. They have a hold harmless provision, so if the formula generates less money than you had last year, you'll still get at least what you had the year before. They've increased the number of times. We used to do state counts for transportation twice a year. It's now 3 times a year, but the count process is more streamlined, so it should take less time. Excuse me, I need to get my water. So the difficulty with the transportation model is it's hard to model ourselves in Excel, and so you're not always sure that you're getting, we're not going to be sure that we're getting what we're supposed to get. It's a multiple regression formula, so we're not sure how that's going to affect us in the long term. So, but no new revenues. The key message is no new revenues due to that formula change. All right, moving on. Key changes to the budget for revenues. And I've got a couple of slides that deal with this, and then you'll see the bottom line on the revenue changes. The legislature, in combination mid-year cuts and cuts to 11-12, reduced the K-4 ratio by $2.6 million. They also cut our funding for salaries for staff, and that was a $2.2 million reduction. We had cuts to ALE and Medicaid. We had increases on the revenue side. When the state increases the retirement rate, we get additional funding, but we also are required to spend additional money. So that's $1.8 million in additional revenues. And then the non-salary MSOC increased slightly by almost $300,000. So the total state impact to us from last year's budget to this year's budget was a loss of $2.8 million. Our enrollment and levy experienced some changes. Our, due to enrollment increase, the 567 students, our revenue due to enrollment increased 1.9 million. Our levy increased 5.2 million, and then we had additional transfers increase from capital projects. So that's a revenue and expenditure offset. And so the local impact is a positive 8.3 million. And as you recall, 2 years ago, the legislature increased the levy lid 4%, and our voters passed increased levy lids. We're not at the, we're at about 3.7% of that 4% that we're able to collect. And whether we're able to collect the full 4% just depends on future funding. So this slide talks about grants and self-supporting programs. We had the federal stimulus money that we received for 2 years that went away, so that was a loss of $2.3 million. Some federal Title I and Title II grants were reduced, so total impact for federal grants, $2.6 million. State grants, the first item isn't really a grant. We receive money from the state for our special ed high-cost students. For those students that are more expensive than a certain set amount, we are able to provide documentation to the state and request reimbursement. We have budgeted, so we get, when we spend the money, we ask for reimbursement, and then state reimburses us. So we've been budgeting $1 million, both revenue and expenditures, for that item. We're increasing that based on our experience. We received $1.8 million this year from the state for our high-cost students. So we're increasing the budget from $1 million to $2 million, so thus that $1 million increase. The other grant was actually a mid-year cut. Beginning Educator Support Team, that was cut in the 10-11 budget, and that cut continues for next year. And then our national board recipients, the state provides a stipend for teachers that receive their national board certificate. The participation for that goes up each year, so there's a slight revenue increase, and we spend exactly what we bring in. We pay out to our teachers what the state provides us. So both the expenditures and revenues have increased. So total of $900,000 for state grant changes. And then we have some other self-supporting programs such as food service and all-day kindergarten enrollment for a net change of $300,000. All-day kindergarten enrollment has declined not because of demand, but because we don't have the space to house all the students in our elementary schools. So the net change in revenue from last year's budget to this year's budget is $4.5 million. This is just a different view of revenues. It matches the budget. This is how you see it in the budget, so I wanted to just show you that. State apportionment, as you know, is the largest source of revenue, determined by our enrollment and the mix of education and experience of our teachers and the legislatively set base salaries. That number would have been a higher decrease or a lower budget number had it not been for our enrollment increases. Our state categorical, those are the funds that the state requires to be spent specifically for such as special ed, transportation, ELL, LAP. You can't spend these revenues for other purposes. And the increase is due to special ed enrollment and the high cost reimbursement that I talked about earlier. Federal funds are declining due to the federal stimulus funds going away, and those dollars are also included special ed, federal, Title I, Head Start, and our free and reduced lunch program. The levy funds at $50 million are increasing due to the additional 4% funds. Fee programs of 14.1% include school lunches, all-day kindergarten and preschool, and extended day. So, and those are increasing slightly due to food service participation and enrollment. And the other is primarily the capital tech transfer, and the increase there is due to increased capital tech money. All right, this is my favorite slide. that shows that the state is continuing to shift the burden of education funding from the state to the local taxpayers. And you can see the significant change this year in state basic and state categorical. You can see how that dropped, and you can see how our levy percentage has increased. If you compare it from 2007 and 8, the state basic and categorical was 70% of the budget. In 07-08, it is now 63% in 11-12. So, and federal dollars are also down due to stimulus money. All right. Moving on to expenditures. So I've got one slide just for key changes in expenditures. Our budget is $5.5 million higher than it was last year. And part of that is our staffing due to enrollment, staffing increases due to enrollment increases. The class size, we made some adjustments to K-4 class size due to the state budget cuts. That was a change of $1.5 million. We also, as I mentioned on the revenue side, our expenditures increased due to the increased cost in pension. We're required to pay additional money for healthcare authority benefits. That's in that figure, and compensation, the planned increments and advancements for our staff. So the other item, grants and self-supporting programs, that's decreased by about $800,000. We have some one-time cost increases, such as some items for reconfiguration when we have to move teachers between buildings. We have some required contractual items for that. We have some costs for planning principal for the STEM school, and then also some safety net fundings that we're using some I-728 dollars to pay for some additional needs due to our federal grant reductions. We have some additional needs for some students that we're paying for out of some one time a year to get us through those changes. We had to I'm really glad Chuck was here tonight because the fixed cost line item is smaller due to his conservation measures. We're not increasing the utility budget at all this year, and you know, due to those conservation measures, that's what keeps, because the utility, as we all know from our home bills, the rates go up every year, but we're able to keep our costs down because we keep saving money. So, but we do have some other fixed cost increases. Insurance increases. We have an election this year, our board election, so that cost is in the budget. We have additional fire inspections that facilities has to pay for, and then additional fuel costs for transportation that is in that. And then we have a small amount for some program support, providing some funds for an inventory system for textbooks that actually saves resources at the school building and allows them to spend their money on other things. We are tracking our textbooks now, and that gives us the ability to move those textbooks around where the students are, as opposed to having schools having to buy new textbooks. And then we're increasing some support in professional development, and then also providing some additional custodial staff at Rosa Parks, which is one of our largest elementary schools. And then the last item is the increase, which you also saw on the revenue side of the tech training and applications. So again, total $5.5 million. This is the budget view of the expenditures, and I won't go through everything in detail. I'll just touch base on, you know, why the changes. Regular education, that increase is primarily due to enrollment. Alternative learning experience has decreased due to enrollment decreases at Family Learning Center. Federal stimulus, that money has gone away. Special education, that is due to some enrollment increases and the additional high-cost student funding that is budgeted. Vocational education, their enrollment's pretty level, so that's just a small change. Skills Center instruction, that is our program. We just started a Skills Center program 2 years ago, and primarily we're doing DigiPen Institute of Technology this year, but for next year we're doing, adding 2 new programs, Fire and Life Safety and Allied Health for next year. So that is an anticipated enrollment increase in the Skills Center program. Our compensatory education, which includes our federal title grants and our Head Start program and LAP and ELL, we have, as I mentioned, decreases in some grants, but increases in national board, and our preschool, our new preschool model, our blended model has been moved from federal stimulus to this category also. The other instruction programs, slight decrease due to, we had a grant that where the money, we were spending some carryover money in the 10-11 budget, and that's no longer there, and that's why that is down. Our community service program, that includes our stadiums and theaters, and we, last year we had budget reduction because the Lake Washington High School Theater closed for 1 year during construction, and we actually now have it back in the budget for that because it will open in the fall. District-wide support, very small increase for those facility inspections and insurance and board election costs that I mentioned earlier. Food service, transportation, also participation and fuel increases. So a total expenditure budget of $231 million for a small increase of 2.4%. So looking beyond the 2011-12 budget, we always have to keep these items on the list in mind, how our enrollment is going to come in. Some years, like last year, we had a very large increase, and we're expecting more increases, but we have to keep an eye on, you know, we may get it all in 1 year, or it may be spread out over a few years, so we have to keep an eye on that. The economy recovery is still slow. The state revenue forecast just came out, and they are projecting another loss of their reserves and potentially $2 billion more in state cuts. So that is not good news, and that, you know, it's only time will tell how that may impact us. Our levy lid, as I mentioned, the voters were generous enough to increase, or to, you know, provide the additional 4%. We're almost collecting the full amount, but that really, our ability to collect our levy depends on future state and allocations. Cost of living adjustments and catch-up provisions is really unknown right now. Pension, the state did increase pension rates this year, but we know that their pensions are still underfunding and more increases will be needed. Fixed cost, as I mentioned, we've got to keep watching that, and we need to keep Chuck around because that'll help keep those utility costs down. But the bottom line is our 5% fund balance will be maintained. And this is just a pictorial bar chart of kind of what the future looks like. Assumptions, very conservative enrollment. Our projections for financial purposes, we use conservative enrollment projections, anticipate a 0.6% growth. As you can see, expenditures are slightly higher than revenues in most years, but we're kind of living on borrowed time. The levy, the 4% levy lid was increased only through 2017. That will go away. We don't know, as I mentioned, the COLA, if the COLA returns in 2013, then that will have an impact, and these projections assume that it does, but we don't know if there's going to be any makeup provisions in that COLA. The state, as I mentioned earlier, there is a state committee reviewing the levy assumptions, or the levy model, and that they could change the levy model, which will, you know, change our ability to collect levy dollars in the future. So that is really the end of my presentation. And future, as you can see from these charts, the future may bring future cuts, as we know. But because, and I talked to the board about this in the work session, because the budget was so late this year, we may have to make minor, we usually don't change the budget between June and August, but because the budget was so late, we're just getting the true revenues. We're able to do a pretty good estimate of what our state revenues are going to be, but we have to wait until we get the actual numbers from the state, and we're just now getting those. So we may have to make some minor expenditure and revenue adjustments to grants and things like that. And I will let the board know as soon as we know what those are. The final adoption of the budget it will be on August 8th, and we'll have a public hearing at that time. But in the meantime, the budget document is on the website, and there's a place for public comment. So if the public wants to view the budget and provide comments, there is a place for that. Copies of the budget are available from my office. I do have some copies of the budget here tonight, and people can email me with questions anytime. So, thank you.
Well, thank you, Barbara. And for those who are watching, while you saw this PowerPoint, you need to know the amount of work and time that it takes in hours to figure this all out, plus the spreadsheets, and then changing them as the state has changed their reporting. It takes a lot of time and effort, and we are very, very fortunate in this district to have Barbara as the person that is in charge of that and keeps us in good shape financially, and much, much appreciated. Do board members have some questions for Barbara while she's up there?
Well, I was going to say, it's my understanding that the cuts that we're going to have to be made as a result of the reduction in state expenditures is on top of roughly $12 million in cuts that have been made over the last several years. So we're inching up towards $20 million in total cuts just in the last few years. So as we're growing at the same time, so it's an interesting dilemma to be in.
Yeah, I'd like to go back to the early 90s when I came up here and said the state has increased our funding. So I actually wasn't up here in the 90s, Janine was, but so.
But you kept saying that we weren't getting any more revenues, but we also were getting less
Yeah.
in some of those cases.
Yeah.
Nancy had a couple questions or a question?
Yeah. I just was trying to get.
I think your mic's not on.
Sorry. I was trying to get clear in my head on these federal decreases in Title I and Title II. Those decreases aren't from the stimulus, are they? Those are just, they've cut those programs.
Yes.
They have.
And have they put money anywhere else? They've just cut Title I and Title II.
Yes. And the Title I formula it changes from year to year. It's all based on poverty factors, not our free and reduced, but it's different poverty factors, some state poverty factors. So it can increase one year and decrease the next year. And then Title II, we were actually, for the last couple years, couple years ago, we had underspent that grant, and we're using carryover. So this budget gets us back to our revenue because we've spent all the carryover, and so part of it, we were using down carryover, plus they cut us additional $80,000 than we had last year in Title II. But no, we're not seeing any new federal dollars this year.
Well, we're seeing a lot less, actually.
Yeah.
Besides the stimulus, which was one time.
But our federal special ed dollars were pretty close to what we expected. So we didn't get a decrease in special ed, but we got a decrease in title and Title II, in both titles. So.
I just find it interesting at this point in time with all the federal push in these areas that they're cutting formulas. I think that was it for now.
Chris?
So I just wanted to go back to the levy lid has been lifted by 4% for a finite period of time. So for the moment, we can make up the gap locally, but when does that expire?
It expires, the law right now has it expiring in 2017, so it would affect us, so 2017 would be the last year you could collect that higher 4%, so it would affect us partway in the 2017-18 school year, and then full impact in the 18-19 school year. But we have, that's what we know today, but as I mentioned, there's this levy work group out there that could change it all again. So,
Thanks.
I think it might be helpful for the viewing public if you explain the levy lid a little more. Like, I'm not sure everyone knows what it is.
sure, I'd be happy to. The levy lid is a formula that allows districts to collect a certain percentage in local levy dollars from their voters, and it was 24% of certain state and federal revenues. So there's 30 different revenues that go into this formula, but it's pretty much your state and federal revenues, and you take that by 24%. 2 years ago, they increased that lid up 4%. Now, there are districts that are grandfathered, so we are grandfathered at 24.89%. There are other districts, such as Bellevue, that's grandfathered at 31%. So they have the ability to collect a lot more than many of their neighbors around them in levy lid. So everybody was allowed to collect 4% more. So we are at 24.89%. And go ahead.
Can I often we're asked by our public when we are talking about increasing class sizes and teacher salaries and those kinds of things, why can't we just vote more money in? And that this is part of that reason, is that the state defines for us how much we can vote in locally under the effort to try and create some kind of equity in the state. For those districts that can't raise money in a local levy, they have a levy equalization formula that actually costs the state a lot of money in order to try and provide some form of equity, although it's not really an equitable formula. The ability for more affluent districts to pass levies and the inability for less affluent districts to not pass levies was part of the impetus for some of this formula reform work that has been going on. And the whole intent was to try and flatten out those disparities across the state. But unfortunately, with no new revenues, the disparities actually have gotten worse and not better. And they've gotten significantly worse rather than better. The other disparities that exist is that we also are controlled by a statewide salary schedule. So what the Lake Washingtons of the world will complain about pretty vigorously is that it doesn't cost the same to live in Lake Washington School District as it does in Spokane or Cheney. And yet the state produces a statewide salary schedule that has teachers who live in Spokane get exactly the same amount per day for teaching as they do in Lake Washington. And so we argue pretty vigorously that there's some disparity there that's also needs to be addressed, and is not addressed very well in the state formulas. We are anticipating that will also be discussed in this work moving forward. How well it's addressed is yet to be seen, of course. But those are some of the constraints from a statewide perspective that many of our taxpayers don't really fully understand when they're talking. They're looking at their tax bill and they say, I don't get it. I don't understand why you can't just ask us for more money I'm willing to pay, or I don't understand why my tax bill is so high. I don't understand why teachers can't make more money or less money. I mean, there's a lot of complexities to the system that are hard for the average person to understand.
Well, and on top of that, the way our tax bills read make it difficult to understand, and the difference between property taxes that go to state funds versus levies that are voted on. And on the state salary schedule, there is also grandfathering, so that there are neighboring districts who have significantly more money from the state for salaries.
That's correct.
So, equitable is non-existent.
Or questionable.
Questionable, yeah.
And I have to, earlier this evening during the work session, you mentioned that they're using regression as part of the equation these days, which puts it beyond the realm of Excel for us figuring out how much money we'll get. Much as this really isn't what I was campaigning when I was looking for higher math in our educational system. I just wanted to make that point very explicit.
I love it, that's great.
But we want our kids to be able to understand this
I wouldn't mind if they knew how to do
When-
a regression. Yes.
when they become voters. Maybe by then, the system will get fixed.
Yeah. I have one question, and then I have a question for Chip, but I have a question for both of you, actually. When you talk about the Skill Center money, what does that do to NEVAC? Is NEVAC now no longer around, or is it both programs are going side by side?
We do have both programs going side by side, so we still have NEVAC, and there are certain classes that are NEVAC classes, and students can move amongst those classes. It's a consortium of 7 districts, and so if you're part of that consortium, your Bellevue students can take classes in our district, and we can take classes in Bellevue district, depending on where those classes are offered. Now, the Skills Center, and then what got added to that is the Skills Center program. And Skills Center funding is what they call a super FTE. So you are allowed to have a 1.6 FTE. They can be a 0.6 in the Skills Center and still be full-time at a high school, for example. So that's the advantage of the Skills Center program. And so we have a lot of students taking, a full load at their high school and then going to DigiPen, for example, for afternoon classes, and we're able to, the state provides those funds for those students to do that.
One of the programmatic distinctions between NEVAC and Skills Center is that Skills Center are designed in 3-hour blocks. NEVAC is designed in 1-hour or 2-hour blocks. A second distinction is that this funding formula that Barbara described is that you can essentially become dual enrolled, and the state supports that if it's a Skills Center class. One of the things that's interesting about our Skills Center program is that most Skills Center in the state are located in a single location in a single building, where we actually were able to get the states to support a distributed Skills Center model, so there are Skills Center classes in each one of our districts, including the new facility that was built at the Lake Washington Technical College for health services. So it's an evolving model, if you will, and currently we think there are some distinct advantages for students.
In those 3-hour blocks that you're talking about, are they going to get some of their core requirements taken care of? How are they going to manage that?
Typically not. I mean, typically they take their core requirements in their home school in one form or another. And so that's why the super FTE is important.
So they're doing both.
But there are some of the DigiPen classes, and I apologize, I can't speak specifically. Dan Phelan could give you specifics. Some of them do qualify for math and science, or math credits.
Because otherwise,
cross credit.
Because 3 hours, that's a huge block of time, and that's going to really impact.
Yeah.
So they'd need to have that crossover.
Yeah.
Okay, great, that's great.
Can I ask one random
sure,
question?
go ahead.
So our Title I and Title II funding are dropping. No Child Left Behind, that's tied to Title I, or is it more than Title I, like the funding?
There is no funding for No Child
No,
Left
I mean,
Behind.
but if you, basically the stick they
NLTs
use is
come
the
out of
money.
Title I.
The accountability system connected with Child Left Behind, the draconian consequences are only go into place if you are classified as a Title I school.
Right. So as I understand it, basically the way in which they kind of compel districts to comply with No Child Left
So
Behind
is the takeaway funding.
is the takeaway of the Title I funding.
Right, that's correct.
Right. It's only Title I, I think. Is that right?
No, I believe
More
it's
than
all
Title I.
federal funding.
Oh, it's all federal.
Yeah, I think if you choose to blow off No Child Left Behind,
Yeah.
then any federal funding is at risk, which represents about 7% of the state formula for funding. Now, 7% doesn't sound like a lot, until you
Oh, no,
actually
that's
start
huge,
looking at
yeah.
what those numbers are.
Right. Okay. I
The
thought it was Title
remedies
I.
that we have to put in place in a school that doesn't meet AYP come out of our Title I monies, right?
That's correct.
So it's a double whammy in a sense.
Yes.
Because the programs you're trying to provide for those students that are higher needs
And is,
and being diverted.
and is that where the transportation comes if you have to move the students
Yes.
from building to building, also comes out of
Yes.
there?
Yes.
So that's an
Yeah.
added cost.
And the, what's it called? I just forgot. Tutoring.
Yes.
Supplemental education
Okay,
services, yeah.
What- Did you have more of a point to make on that?
No, I thought it was only Title I, in which case, the amount that they're using to basically compel us to pay attention to this is
It's a high leverage
is
point.
dropping, right, to not much, right?
Yeah,
But,
it is remarkable if you think historically that, education is the chief responsibilities of the state as defined in the Constitution, and the federal government can drive the entire education agenda with 7% of the skin in the game.
right, yeah,
It is a horrible system.
yeah.
Oh, well, I have a question for Chip coming up if anyone has any other questions of Barbara. Okay, thank you, Barbara, very much again for your presentation.
Thank you, Barbara.
And your hard work. I know for our public, two of the things that they've heard loud and clear for what the state has done to districts has been around the K-4 enhancement money going away, which affects class size, and about teacher salaries and not just teachers, but salaries in general for educators. Can you address for the board and for the public how this district's going to respond to those cuts?
Sure. There were lots of line items that you saw in this budget, but a way to think about it very simply is that the state reduced our revenues related to class size in K-4 and related to compensation of staff. So if we think about class size in K-4, over the past 3 years, the state has actually reduced our K-4 allocation by $13 million, including about $2 million that was done this year. Every time the state did that cut, what we did is we used local levy money to make up for that cut. So districts around us were changing class size, laying off teachers, changing their formulas. And in Lake Washington, we heard from our community pretty loud and clear when we did our last budget process that there were two things that came out as the unequivocal top priorities. Number one is attract and retain high-quality staff. And number two was, as much as possible, keep class size small, especially in the lower grades. So each time we would protect class size, protect class size, protect class size to the tune of about $13 million. So this year we made a small adjustment in class size, small meaning to the tune of about $1.5 million of that $13 million hole that has been created by the state by the elimination of K-4 funding as well as I-728. And what that's going to translate into is an increase in class size of about 1 student in K-4. So we're not happy about it. We think that it certainly is not the direction we prefer to head, but we think in light of the $13 million cut over the last 3 years, we're actually quite proud of the work that we've done. And it's important to note that this is being accommodated for specifically because of our voters voting in local levies that are making up the difference for the lack of the state fulfilling its responsibility. The second area is around compensation. And what the state delivered was a pretty deliberate compensation cut of 1.9% for teachers and other staff and 3% for administrators, salary cut across the board. Now, this is an allocation to us, and how we actually execute that cut is based upon local bargaining and what happens in the units in every one of our units. And in this instance, again, we went back to what is the priority that our community told us. Our community told us that we needed to attract and retain high-quality staff. And that's, in our mind, done through a number of ways. One is how we compensate, but also how that's done is the professional development that we provide for our staff. And so we thought about this problem and said, how can we take this cut, and how can we both keep our folks compensated as adequately as we can and continue to provide professional development, especially in a year where we're moving to a 4-year high school system, which means K-6 is going to go to K-5, 7-9 is going to go to 6-8, and 10-12 is going to go to 9-12. And if we think about a typical high school, 50% of the kids in the fall of 2012 are going to be new to the high school, and as much as a quarter of the staff. And in a typical middle school, 2/3 of the kids and families are going to be new to that school, and possibly as much as a third of the staff. Huge transitions for the system. So what we proposed to our employee group, well, let me back up a little bit. We wanted to build some guiding principles that would drive how we would respond to this problem that was delivered to us by the state. And here were the guiding principles. One guiding principle was, if possible, try and keep our employees' salaries whole. And do that through a combination of existing resources as well as additional work required by our employees. So they wouldn't just get the same salary, they would get the same salary, but would be required to do something additional in order to keep that salary in light of the reduced reductions from the state. Another guiding principle for us was to do it equitably across the system. So if we were going to propose something for teachers, we would do the same for classified staff, we would do the same for administrators, we would do the same for the superintendent. That everybody would have to give a little to get a little inside of this pretty awful situation. We also wanted to make sure that we kept the fiscal interest of the district intact, that we would not fall below our 5% cash balance that is required as per board policy, that we would make sure that we manage the revenues of the district over the midterm so that we don't find ourselves upside down. We also wanted to make sure that we kept student learning and students at the center of our decision making. And lastly, we wanted to make sure that we provided value for our taxpayers, because frankly, our taxpayers are paying more local taxes for what has happened as a result of the state cuts. So, so we are working with each of these groups in order to do this balance of keeping them whole as well as requiring additional work. And the work, especially as it relates to teachers that we're proposing, is specifically related to transitions, because we knew we were going to have to do some transition anyway. So that's providing time for kids to transition and time for staff to transition as well as they go into a new work environment. So each of these groups is contemplating proposals that we put forward, and over the next several weeks we anticipate that we'll be hearing from those groups. The administrators actually voted on a proposal today, both the central office and the principals, and voted overwhelmingly supportive of doing some additional work. And again, focusing on transition, and we're anticipating similar kinds of responses from other bargaining groups in the short term.
Any questions or comments from anybody else? Thank you, Chip. I think that will be helpful for folks, because I know that will be, when you look at the budget, you don't really see that anywhere specifically, that was addressed, and I appreciate that you've covered that for folks who, I'm sure that's the two areas that they're wondering about, what did we do and how did that impact. I think the other thing is that I think you mentioned that we didn't have to do any layoffs.
Yes.
As other districts have
Yes,
had
that's
to do,
correct.
which is not easy, but because of, it doesn't mean we're not having less teachers, it's just because of attrition that we don't have to have it done by layoffs.
That's correct.
And non-renewable
And
contracts.
non-renewable contracts.
What was interesting is that this last weekend I was at our association Ledge Committee meeting in Olympia, Friday and Saturday, And we had a brief period of time where there's approximately, there's 20 of us representing 20 different districts. And it was interesting, almost to a district, all districts were able to manage the reductions that they experienced. Many did do layoffs, but in most cases, those people were hired. Some districts used that as an opportunity to get rid of people that they didn't want to have come back. But it was interesting to see that most districts have weathered this, and we're talking about districts of different sizes, ranging from just a few hundred to, in our case, 24,000.
But at the same time, as we've weathered this and absorbed these cuts year after year for the last few years now, it has impacted so many other things that we would normally try and do, and what was intended to be done with levy monies. Our parents are paying fees for
Right.
many things. It impacts, I don't want people to think that we haven't had to make sacrifices in order to keep our teachers whole in this way.
Well, that was the point I wanted to make, is that while, we've done our job, the other piece of it is not only have our local taxpayers they've had to shoulder a larger burden, but again, the legislature gets to walk. I mean, they basically,
Yep.
this basically empowers them to continue along the same road. And so that's the depressing part of that, is that we've done our job as responsible public officials to try to make the best of it.
Yeah.
But again, the legislature has been able to continue down the same path. And now, with this old MSOC and this, the other ways of the model school formula for funding that's replaced the traditional formula, it allows them to continue to, say that, well, we've got the formula, but we can't fund it. And that'll, of course, I think they'll use that as a defense against future court action. So it's, kind of a depressing landscape.
I was in Chicago and visited a school district very similar in character to Lake Washington, a middle-class school district. And when you looked at their per-pupil funding, if we had their per-pupil funding, we would have $100 million more in our budget.
Which district?
Naperville.
Oh, okay.
And
I'm
so
surprised.
their per-pupil funding is about $12,000 per student. And
They have very different funding in Illinois.
very different funding formula in Illinois. And my point is that when we look at class size, we're in the mid to low 40s nationally. When we look at per pupil funding, we're in the mid to low 40s nationally. We look at salaries, we're about the middle of the pack, in the high 20s to low 30s. And we are in a state where we have a governor that claims to be an education governor and a legislature that claims to care about education, but clearly cannot get funding for education. And it's a real problem if we are intending to be truly getting students to be future ready and frankly, attracting businesses to do business in this state. If you talk to the business owners in our community and the people who are working here, the number one criteria for them choosing to live in any given place is schools. I'm part of the Redmond Economic Development Council, and that is the number one driver as to why business owners put businesses here and why people choose where people choose to live. And if we can't find our state government willing to either A, fund education adequately, or B, give us license to fund it ourselves, one or the other, we are going to be in a free fall that will hurt us economically for decades.
And I think the one thing to remind people of, when the levies originally came into play way back when, they were designed for enhancement and enrichment. They were not designed to be there to pay the bills for salaries and now it's, athletics and transportation and additional people, additional salaries, additional days, whatever it is, it all comes out of levy. And that was not the original intent there. And so it's grown as the proportion of the budget as you saw today. Well, we'll end our budget talk. Just a reminder for those who are watching that we will have a public hearing on August 8th if folks want to come here to speak before the board. You don't have to wait that long. You have opportunity to go on the website. You can look at the materials. You can comment there. You can email board members. You can email Barbara. You can, if you have questions, if you want a hard copy, you can get hard copies available at the district. You've got close to 8 weeks between now and August and time for folks to do that, and I hope people will take advantage of that. So we have a number of places for you to be able to see those. Graduation requirements.
Great. Thanks,
Change
Jackie.
topic.
Under tab 18 in your notebook, we've been talking for some time now about future readiness skills and alignment of our graduation requirements and the work that we're having kids do in order to make sure that they're future ready. One of those things that we've talked about quite a bit is foreign language, in that if we're serious about every student being college prepared, global workplace prepared, and personally prepared for the future, that we would have to take a different stance on foreign language requirements. So what you have before you is a recommendation to add to, beginning with the class of 2016, which would be the freshman class starting not this fall, but the following fall, freshman class that begins high school in the fall of 2012, that they would be required to have 2 credits of foreign language in order to graduate from high school. There are appeal processes built into this so that if students have options that align with their high school and beyond plan and have a career path that may take them through a different path, there are processes so that they can get those requirements waived. But it really is the intent to make sure that every student has as many options as possible by making them eligible for a 4-year university education. So I'd be happy to invite Tracy Pierce to the podium to answer any questions the board may have around this change in graduation requirements.
Okay, well, my question, which I tried to bring up before, is under number 1A, which is 10, 11, and 12, 12.12 on page 2 of 11 says, see section 2 for your performance-based graduation requirements.
Go to page 7.
Go to page 7.
At the top.
And
That's where they are.
I don't, okay. Okay, so this is what we have left. This is what I was expecting that we were going to see some changes in.
They're coming. So we have a process in place where we are looking at this piece by piece. So we're starting here, but we are looking at performance-based graduate. Do you want to talk a little bit about the timeline or that, Tracy?
Sure. In the context of planning for school configuration, we had a number of work sessions with secondary administrators this year, focusing first on credit-based graduation requirements because we had some inconsistencies between high schools and needed to ensure that we had consistent credit-based requirements across the system, and began talking about the implementation of the world language requirement to ensure that all of our credit-based requirements align to the minimum credit-based graduation requirements for entrance into college or university, and that's shown on the chart on page 33. So really our focus this year has been on the credit-based graduation requirements. Our current graduation requirement policy that you have completely, it's file IKFR, outlines the credit-based graduation requirements, the performance-based graduation requirements, as well as provisions related to graduation requirements in terms of equivalency credit and those types of things. So The change in the policy is really reflected on page 4 of 11, and it's letter C. So it's specifically dealing with the credit-based requirements for the class of 2016 and beyond. And the world language credit requirement you'll see is number 8. And the change to the net number of elective credits required, you'll see in number 9. So starting on page 7 of 11, with Roman numeral 2, it outlines our current performance-based graduation requirements. We have not yet started a refinement process around that aspect of graduation requirements. In terms of timeline, this next year, we are continuing the focus on the career/interest cluster work and how that will impact high school and beyond and culminating project. The next year, so that would be the fall of 2012, is when we're scheduled to begin the discussion then about how does this impact our current performance-based graduation requirements in terms of the essays, the formal lab report, and the math problem-solving report.
Okay, and you're right, I missed them because they were just run together right there, and I was scanning paragraphs, reading the first line or so. If they had been bulleted, I wouldn't have missed them. I really did look. So we still have the 3 essays, the science lab, and I hadn't even caught on to the math one because that's really fairly new. We're not adding any more. Was that as many as we had planned?
No.
That's what I thought. We have dropped.
We actually had planned several dozen.
Yeah.
And so, no. And so part of, I think, our realignment work is figuring out what then do we do inside of classes, knowing that a credit is going to be around for a while to ensure that kids are indeed meeting our standards. Part of this work around doing these external requirements, I think, was to try and put pressure inside of the system. Well, I think we were ignoring the problem, and now we're paying attention to the problem. So as we pay more attention to the problem, we will then peel back these requirements and ask the question, are they doing what we wanted them to do? Are we getting the outcomes we want? And if so, what does that look like? And if not, why not? And then reevaluate those. But we couldn't do that until we started dealing with the problem, which is things like credits and what does a credit really mean? And asking questions like grading practices. And I mean, there are some pretty deep questions that we've got to be asking ourselves, which we are starting to. We're getting on the edge of it. I think there's some really good work has taken place, and it will get better as time goes on.
So one of my other issues with the foreign language requirement, which has been my issue for decades, is starting foreign language early so that kids actually learn a foreign language, since 2 years of high school language for the vast majority of people is really just an introduction. Have we had any more discussions, or are we?
I can speak to that. One of the challenges is currently a high school credit is defined as 150 hours of instruction, and it has to meet the standards for year 1 of a world language. So in the reconfiguration process, we'll begin allowing students to take the credit-bearing world language class beginning in 8th grade. So
And the colleges will count that?
We can bring that credit up, and in fact, we have current practice of bringing up credits from 7th or 8th grade to reflect on a student's high school transcript for world language. Having a credit-bearing world language class that meets the year 1 standards is problematic to sort of do earlier than 8th grade. However, we are looking at other ways of bringing world language experience in terms of exposure and culture, so students have some experience with different world languages prior to the 8th grade when they're going to choose potentially which credit-bearing world language course they're going to take.
So, okay, yeah,
I mean,
because I still hope that we can soon offer, have foreign language in our elementary schools.
And that's been something we've talked about for several years, and until we find a way to fund it,
I know.
It just is not something that's realistic for us until we find a funding methodology.
I've been talking about it for 14 years, just to be
Fair
on the
enough.
record.
Yep.
And what about the questions that were raised at last board meeting about American Sign Language as being one of the offerings?
So just historically, ASL, ASL, we actually had it in one of our high schools, and it suffered from low enrollment. So if there is enrollment for ASL, we will offer ASL. If there's not enrollment, we can't offer it similar to any other electives. We haven't asked the question in a while, so I think it may be appropriate for us to ask that question of kids, would they choose to sign up for ASL? But again, it is enrollment driven.
Well, and particularly when it becomes a requirement. I don't know what percentage of our kids don't do the two years required for college.
Right now, about 70% of our kids are already doing the 2 years.
Yeah, I figured it was pretty
So
high.
we've got about 30%. So the question, which is a fair question, is those 30% that don't, would ASL be another option for them that they would prefer, and can we get enough enrollment in order to actually drive a class?
Well, they raised some interesting, which eventually I'd like to hear more about, the points they raised
Sure.
about the reasons for ASL having other benefits. And then also, I know that our community colleges offer ASL, and I think probably the technical college, so students can go off campus to get their requirement, can't they?
Yes, so there's a process.
Yeah, we have actually in the same policy language around acceptance of credits from accredited colleges for students who are currently enrolled in our system. So we do accept credit from accredited colleges. There is RCW that says if a district is going to implement a world language requirement, then they need to accept ASL credit as part of that. It doesn't say that we have to offer it, although we do have high schools already, talking about being interested in offering it when we begin with the new requirement. So I anticipate that there will be students interested, and there will be high schools looking to offer ASL.
It's interesting, too, because like with other foreign languages, proficiency in a foreign language, including ASL, opens up interesting career paths
Absolutely.
for students, too. So it does tie to career path.
Is this something, too, that we can look on it in broadening it with online services versus officially in the classroom? If you have enough kids in 2 or 3 buildings, but not enough in any one building, that could do something with,
Yeah.
especially if you're trying to get to that 30% of the kids?
Sure. One of the things we're learning a lot about, and if you look at the literature around online learning, is that most experts currently suggest that exclusive online learning really only works for a very small fraction of students. What really is, you need blended learning models. So blended learning models typically still require enough kids to drive enrollment at a site. And that's a dilemma for us. And so how we do that, we need to figure out how to do that well. And I think it's going to emerge because, how rural schools, for example, deal with this when they have high schools of 400. That's a challenge for them. So we just have to be creative about how we're figuring that out. And we're going to keep pressing on that issue.
And I suspect technology will allow us to have more of a blended model and still have small classes, having that participation electronically, not because it can just be there.
Right.
Although I have to admit, I tried to learn ASL and I took it, but without somebody to practice with,
Yeah.
I couldn't remember it all. You got to practice language.
A question that kind of goes from a different, it feeds into this, but it's a little bit different, is that, the old saw is that one of the definitions of insanity is to do the same thing over and over. And in this case, one could argue even more of it and expect a different result. And I'm not trying to be flip when I say that. What I'm getting at is students that are even struggling under the current requirements, there's a certain percentage. And have we thought about safety nets and other strategies that need to be in place to be able to help them achieve this greater requirement.
Yeah, can I speak to that? So, and that leads me, connects to something I wanted to just clarify. There's some language around process to appeal that applies specifically to the performance-based graduation requirements, not the credit-based graduation requirements. So, first and foremost, we have to ensure that students graduate earning the minimum state credit-based graduation requirements, and we can't waive those credits. We've got equivalency credit policy and so forth, but we just can't waive what those state minimum requirements are. Now, the world language requirement isn't a state minimum requirement. That would be a district requirement. But the high school and beyond work that is on tap for next year is to establish a process whereby students can substitute, per the State Board of Education recommendations, certain credit requirements specific to their high school and beyond plan. World language credit requirements would be one of those credits, where if my high school and beyond plan specifically leads me to, a certain post-secondary experience, and I have good rationale and reason why, and my parents are on board with it, of why I don't need to take this world language requirement, I can substitute different credit requirements under that process. So we have work to do to align our high school and beyond plan with the State Board of Education recommendations, and that will happen concurrently with this new credit requirement, so we have that in place.
Are you saying that someone could substitute something that isn't foreign language for the foreign language credit?
Correct. So
Like
there's
what?
a different elective if it aligns with their post-secondary plan. So there's certain areas that the State Board has identified may sub per high school and beyond. That's their recommendation. Certain areas, no. For example, even with a third math credit requirement, if based on a student's high school and beyond plan, they can substitute one of those third math credits for an alternate math course that isn't in that pathway of algebra 2 and geometry. So there's some flexibility for students based on their high school and beyond plan, which is why it's so important to have really good parameters and understanding in place across the system of what the purpose of a high school and beyond plan really is.
So if I wanted to take more science classes, I could apply for that to count instead of the foreign language?
Well, as long as, so we've got the state minimum graduation requirements, credit-based graduation requirements, and those are shown on page 33 under tab 18.
Right.
So students have to meet these total state minimum credit-based graduation requirements. Then you'll see that the state minimum is 19, and our current district and proposed district is 22. So there's already 3 credits that we require as a district that are over and above the state minimum requirement. So there's some areas in the elective area, some of the areas that don't, for example, world language, that aren't state minimum requirements, that there would be substitution room for students. But I couldn't say I want to not take any English language arts and substitute more PE. I couldn't do that because I wouldn't be meeting the minimum state credit graduation requirement.
Do that with foreign language, though. Since we're adding it, I could say I'm going to take more PE and I apply to.
So
has to
that
connect
really is
somehow
based
to-
upon our criteria.
Yes.
So part of the work that we have to do is we need to set up parameters for any kind of exceptions, and the more guidance we have internally,
Right.
the better that will be controlled.
Yeah, I mean, the more flexibility we offer, the more pointless this is.
Exactly.
Right.
That's exactly right.
So, okay, so let me assume for the moment that we don't make it totally flexible,
Right.
That, I don't know, maybe there's some exceptions, but I'm guessing it would be the exception rather than the rule that the 30% of kids would take something different than foreign
Yes.
language. That's a fair?
So what we are trying, where we are today is we have kids who are aimlessly walking through high school, who don't have a plan in place, they don't have a career path, and they decide not to take foreign language because they don't feel like it, and they end up not being prepared for anything other than having a high school diploma. What we want is kids who are either university prepared, or they have a very deliberate career path they have in mind that takes them down a different path, and it is documented so that they can then pursue that career path. So it's what we don't want to do is say that every kid must go to the university. What we want to say is that we want every kid to have that choice, unless they have a very deliberate alternative choice and they have a really good plan in place, they should be able to execute that choice.
So let's say that I'm a kid who I don't have a very good plan, right? And I still don't want to take foreign language.
Well, you have to, or you can't graduate from high school.
Exactly, right. So what
You
makes
better
us...
get your plan improved. You better get your plan improved.
You either got to build a plan or you got to take foreign language, or you're not going to graduate from high school.
Well, one concern I have is, and I know that we're just walking down, I mean, we're just starting the journey, really. So, and I'm not trying to beat up anybody at this point. But one of the concerns I have, especially in this environment of fewer and fewer resources, is we really need to enhance the counseling capacity that we have in the system to be able to help both families and students navigate through this. And so I hope that attention is given to the extent, given the resources we have, that we can deal with it. But I think I'm kind of envisioning something like the process that we're using to roll out our middle school model. Maybe not to as great an extent, but to really get the word out to students and to parents and to the community as far as what we're doing with this and where we're going with it.
Yep.
So anyway,
Well,
I think
and early, because like I
Right,
said,
right.
for some kids, maybe they need to start thinking about foreign language much earlier than before they get to ninth grade. Yeah, and, and also because this is just going to put another crimp, as much as I want it, it's just reducing their electives even further.
Right, that was kind of the line of questioning I was trying to get at here, right? Is that I'm not actually saying I'm opposed to this, but we are, if you look at the requirements, foreign language goes from 0 to 2, electives goes from 6 to 4.
Right.
Right, now I'll make up numbers here that are kind of extreme. Let's say of the 30% of kids, half of them decided to walk, right? Forget it. Who needs foreign language? Who needs high school, right?
Sure.
I think this would be a catastrophic change in that case, right? I don't think that's going to happen. I'm pretty sure that 15% of kids are not going to just decide to not graduate. But I'm wondering how you think about the trade-off, right, between, we're asking more of students, and most of them will rise to the challenge, and some of them, as you add more requirements, some of them are not interested in rising to the challenge.
So the reality is what we need is a 7-period day, and we need more time for more class opportunities
Yes.
for kids. That's really what we need.
Right.
In light of the fact that there's not currently a funding model in order to do that, we have talked here among the board and among the administration about raising expectations and being serious about having every kid college ready. This is the pathway to do that. So if we're not really serious, then let's throw out the vision statement and let's not say that we're serious about every kid being college ready. And that's really, and does it reduce choices for kids? Absolutely it does. It's a real problem. However, that said, 70% of our kids are already in this pathway.
Right.
And there are ways to create an alternative pathway as long as it is a thoughtful career pathway. And we hope that at some point in the future, we'll be able to continue to add opportunities for kids. Tracy, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I just wanted to add one piece. If even in a 6-period day in a 4-year high school, students have 24 spots available to earn credit. but we have 22 credits that are required for graduation. So one way to think about it is there's 2
I forgot about that.
spots
Yeah,
free
there is a little more, there is a little bit.
right now that if you're taking a full load every year. So just one thing to add to the conversation.
Yeah, I've forgotten they had that 2
And
floaters.
I'm just going to ask, because we've got 5 years before this officially goes, we're beginning with the ninth graders, right?
Yes, so
it's
this
for
goes
the
into
class of
place the fall of
2016.
2012 is when it goes into
For
place.
the ninth graders
For
in
the
the
ninth
fall of
grade, right.
2012, the same time we start
Right.
them
I
on
just want
four-year
people to
high
have some
schools.
timing in there, too, of what they're doing. And certainly, I think other, the comments have been here. We never did put a motion on the table to do this.
I'll move
Please.
approval.
To finish.
Second.
We're putting the cart before the horse and backwards
done.
in your.
I'll
Okay.
move to second.
Chris has a comment.
Yeah, I have the same hesitations around reduced choice. I'm fully supportive of world language, but I've actually found something that, I'm sorry, I don't actually read our policies in detail all that often. And there's in page 4 of 11, top of the page, section 5 on the health and fitness credits. Students can be excused from PE under RCW 28A230.050. And then it says something further about the substituting equivalency credits in accordance with policies of the district. What I'm unable to find is any policies in the district about substituting equivalency credits, but what I was able to find under that RCW is a really interesting statement. And I just want to go on the record as being thrilled that somebody had the foresight to put this into law. Directed athletics, what is it? Excused students shall be required to substitute equivalency credits in accordance with policy.
Could you
of boards
speak into your
direct-
mic?
Yeah, sorry.
Thank you.
The high school graduation requirement, the, what is it? Like coursework? Okay. Excused students shall be required to substitute equivalency credits in accordance with policies of board of directors. So you can see the parallel to our stuff. The next sentence I really would like to see brought over. Directed athletics shall be interpreted to include community-based organized athletics.
So we do have, per that RCW on page 10 of 11.
Okay.
It outlines our equivalency credit policy.
Okay. So actually, I guess in
And
5,
so
I'd like to see the
community-
link to that. But on 10, we've got the directed athletics.
Where did you say we were looking?
On page 10 of 11, number
Yep.
5, that's our established equivalency credit policy. So under current policy, students could submit this, there's a form that is linked here, and request equivalency credit for community-based athletics for,
It fits under that. It's not mentioned here explicitly, and I really would like to see that called out.
So generally speaking, from a policy perspective, I think it is probably appropriately written. What we need is practice.
Yeah.
So there has been an enormous amount of misunderstanding that Tracy's done a good job of clarifying the last year or so. And that is, there's a significant difference between equivalency credit and a waiver. And so what was happening was that some schools, under certain conditions, were waiving PE, and that's against the law, as opposed to providing equivalency credit based upon a set of criteria, and that's gotten clarified recently. Now, the conversations that are currently going on, and I mean, you all know that I have quite a bit of interest in getting kids who are involved in a variety of activities, athletic activities, to be able to get equivalency credit for PE, because then it frees up their schedule to do other things.
That's right. I mean, if that plus
Right,
world
right.
language is only
Okay,
net
so
loss of half
all of
course.
that said, we're working on that, and Tracy may be able to say where we are with that more specifically, but that is an issue. You know my interests, and we're working towards that.
Yeah, I just wanted to express
Tell
my
me
interest very
specifically on here
publicly
where
this.
it is.
And well, I'm just wondering with.
I'm not
what-
finding it.
Oh,
what-
that's the thing. Technically, it falls under this. It's
Talking
not
about, yeah,
explicit.
where you're talking about directed
Yeah.
directed athletics. We have some examples in that paragraph
And they
that
don't
say
include it.
such things as travel study, work study. Could that be included in the example that directed athletics? I think that would help a family that was
What's our
looking at this.
policy and procedure?
Community-based organized
Yeah.
athletics.
Yeah, whatever you want to call it.
Sure.
Yeah.
But it'd be part of
That
that
would be
example.
thrilling to me.
You bet.
Thank you.
Yep. Okay.
So are we to the point where our high schools are a little bit more uniform now in how they apply this?
I believe that's true. Tracy, do you want to respond to that?
Your work.
On the equivalency credit, yeah, we have spent, I don't know, countless hours on this topic, ensuring that everybody is aware of the policy, everybody understands, and is applying it evenly. So I believe, yes, we are in a place, I think there's still some question about participation in on-campus sports, because currently our form talks about the learning experience happens away from the campus. So that's still something that we are, because I think we all share an interest in, and we have past practice of people waiving PE for kids who are participating in sports at the school. We want them to be granting equivalency credit for these kinds of experiences and ensure that our policies and forms allow for that. So there might need to be some slight tweaks and revisions.
Okay, so that's there. Anything else? All good? Are we ready to vote? All those in favor of approving these graduation changes, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you, Tracy, for the explanation and answers. On to monitoring policies.
Great. Thanks, Jackie. Under tab 19, we have EL5, treatment of parents and citizens. As is our practice, we will spend time talking about those that are in partial compliance or non-compliance. EL5 is in full compliance, but let me go ahead and read the summary. With respect to treatment of parents and citizens, the CEO shall ensure conditions, procedures, actions, and decisions are in place which are safe, lawful, ethical, respectful, and in compliance with board policies. And it talks about use of confidential information, fair and expedient handling of complaints, compliance with law, and creating a welcoming environment for parents and guests, and maintaining an open, responsive organizational culture. Those are the major areas, and it's in full compliance. Questions? Okay, under tab 20, EL number 6, student learning environment. In this instance, this EL is about respect to treatment of students shall ensure that all conditions, procedures, actions, decisions are in place which are safe, lawful, ethical, respectful, and in compliance with board policies. And in this one, we talk specifically about a climate that is characterized by support and encouragement for high achievement. There's a number of components related to this one. This includes our guiding principles around connection, value, and challenge, and the descriptors around those conditions. This includes our continuous improvement planning process, our teacher professional growth and evaluation system. This year we implemented our ICED in classrooms everyday learning walks. We talked about school configuration. We also have climate data that is collected through our community perception survey. We talked about advanced placement, which characterizes our support and encouragement for high achievement. We talked about counseling services and targeted assistance and safety net, all of which are assuring a climate that is characterized by support and encouragement for high achievement. This really is about that notion of challenge. Are we getting towards that notion of challenge? This is in partial compliance because while we believe that we are doing some really good things in this area, as identified in the conversations that we had with the board in March, we worry about those kids in the middle who are not being challenged possibly as well as they could be. And so while, again, we think that we're doing some really good work in this area, we think that we could do better. The data shown here is pretty good data and either the same or improving. But again, we think that we could be doing better. So in this instance, we have marked this in partial compliance. 2 and 3 are in compliance, and not a lot of discussion on those. Questions on this one?
Well, I have a request on page 3 of 7 for the first part there.
Yep.
We've got tables everywhere else. Could we make that a table
Yep.
for looking at, I got hard.
This is the parent community data, that
Yeah,
first
and the staff,
section.
and the staff, the whole thing.
Yep.
It would be easier to follow it
Okay.
by looking at a table.
Yep, we can do that. Any other questions? I'm sorry, Robbie.
Yeah, I've got a few. So on that, the data about the survey data for community perception, 72% express agreement that Lake Washington School District creates a climate of support and encouragement for high achievement, which is down from 76% last year. However, community members went up from 60 to 66. I'm wondering, do we have any kind of reference point to see, is this just random movement in these numbers, or are these meaningful changes?
Yeah, Catherine manages that survey. Do you have any statistics on whether or not that is considered a significant or non-significant shift, or do you not know that? And if we don't know that, we can get back to you on that, because we have a statistician run this.
Yeah, I don't know that, but my recollection is that generally it's within sort of the range that historically we've been in that area, that it's not a statistically significant difference, but I can get those numbers specifically back to you.
Okay, yeah, thanks. I mean, my guess is that it's not significant just because
Yeah.
one is going up, the other's going down. But
It is interesting that you have parent perception going down and community perception going up, which
On that
indicates
particular
that
topic.
that's odd. I mean, it's not like it's a significant issue of quality more than what's this data, what can we ferret out from the data?
right.
Yeah.
I think, too, that it's the parents who, I mean, that was one of the issues at my table on our linkage a couple weeks ago. It was a big issue for the parents at my table.
Yep.
It's not enough slots in the Quest and Honor programs.
Yep.
And so I think for parents, it's more personal. For the community, they just see the overall Lake Washington achievement.
True.
Okay, I've got a few more. So on AP courses, so enrollment, I think, is student taking, like if a student takes 5 courses, that's 5
5 pieces,
enrollments.
right.
That's correct.
Right. So I think in the past you've also reported just how many students took an AP course?
We've been asking, I don't think we've seen it yet.
Or do we just always ask? I suggest that you provide that. Like, I think
Okay.
it's a interesting and different view on it. Like, how
I mean, it could be 100 kids versus, that make the 600, is what
right,
you're saying.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Okay. So you're looking for individuals in addition to total number of AP
Right.
classes?
And I think I want to say that was difficult to capture in the past, but I'm not sure that I was right in understanding that.
Janine, do you have some
The
information about
dashboard
that?
should help, shouldn't it? The data dashboard?
Tracy and I were just talking, I think some of this is redundant of information that's in EL7, so I think the instructional EL, so some of the AP data is there, and if it's there, then we were trying not to give redundant data. So we can go back and look at that, but that's kind of our conversation. We were trying to, some of this data overlaps a little bit between the ELs, so we can look there to
I
see if
see.
it's
It's just
given by
that
individual there.
the ELs are kind of far enough apart when we monitor them.
Yeah.
It's hard to remember,
Yeah.
what the data
And
is.
we were talking about, and that's a topic that we have, is to talk about ELs to change or
Yes.
blend or whatever, and maybe EL6, the student learning environment, and EL7 are
go
two
together.
that we ought to think about how do they go together and make it a report, because now we're not doing EL7 in the book that's this thick
Right.
that we used to do.
Well, and another thing is that by looking at the number of students also, and are the high schools working to increase the number of students taking AP exams? 'Cause
Right.
that's been one of the somewhat, I don't know if it's been an articulated goal, but it's kind of been behind this, to continually increase the number of kids that are challenging themselves in this way.
Right, yeah, that kind of relates to two things that I was interested in. Like, so why is the number of exams going up? Do we have any thoughts about that? Like, enrollment has essentially been flat. So there was a period where the enrollment just went up pretty significantly year over year, more or less. And the exams, it's really gone up more.
But some kids don't take the exams even though they're in AP.
I know, but why?
So maybe
like,
more.
Why did the exams go up like 10% this year and enrollment didn't? Like, are we encouraging kids to take them more?
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that
Bet you that's why.
question. Why don't I pose that to Dan?
Yeah,
and see if
Didn't we
get some
start
information
providing
about that.
scholarships? Isn't somebody helping to provide
Well, I
scholarships
think the
for those?
foundation does through access funds. That's the piece.
Or
that-
AP exams?
I think that may be
Yeah,
a piece
it's
of
not
theirs.
highly accessed, but yes.
Yeah.
Because that's going to help a little.
But I'm thinking
some
that
kids.
some more kids are actually taking it. that
Yeah, I was
took
just
the
a little
course and
surprised
chose not to
since
in the
I thought
past.
colleges are caring less about, giving credit for AP tests.
I think that that's generally true, is
Yeah.
that AP exams are now, AP classes on the transcripts are now more a function of college eligibility rather than college crediting. You can get college credit, obviously, if you do get 3, 4, or 5 on an AP exam.
To 4 or 5.
But now anymore, because it's become so competitive, if you don't take an AP exam or some advanced course
I
of
see.
study, your ability to be competitive in college is much more difficult.
Okay. So I have kind of two major comments about this part of the EL. So one is, and I think it's consistent with your plans. I'd like to see more energy around, well, both more energy and effort of evidence that we're getting to the kids who aren't already encouraged for high achievement. Like, what are we doing to, some kids, frankly, their parents are doing basically adequate encouragement, and no matter what we do, they're going to feel as if they need to, be high achievers, right? And others, they don't have that to the same degree.
Yeah.
What are we doing to get to those kids, and is it working, right? I'd like to see more around that.
Yeah. What do you think, and I agree, obviously, I agree with most of the things you suggest. One of the things we're doing to get there is, I think, the high school and beyond planning.
Yes. That's consistent with the kind of thing that I'm
Right.
talking about. Yeah, I think we're making good steps with
Yeah,
things
so
like
what
that.
would evidence look like to you? I mean, other than a better high school and beyond plan and having some matrix that we can use as it relates to that, is there other evidence that specifically that you're thinking of?
I've got one piece if you don't.
Sorry?
I mean, along those lines, what we've got here is enrollment, but I believe that's class by class, not students. What fraction of students have taken one?
Right, so.
That's the metric we're still missing.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
that was
like
asked for.
Yes, that was related, the percentage of students that take an AP course or something
Right.
could be a kind of thing.
Yeah.
Or, I mean, if you want to get even fancier, don't take this as necessarily the direct request, but sort of the kind of thing that I'm thinking about. Like,
Right.
if you could show sort of demographically, here are kids who, in general, would not already be inclined to, within a climate of encouragement for high achievement. We did all these things, and look, here's where we are compared to other districts. They're taking, these AP classes. They're, taking, 4 years of math and 4 years of science, like something like that, right? To kind of like focus it on the kids that we would make the most difference for with our encouragement.
Yeah, okay. All right, we'll think about that problem.
Okay, and then my other point is around culminating project. I know we talk about this all the time, but I'll bring it up again. I really feel like this is kind of a missed opportunity for the district. I know that resources are limited, but we have something that really kids aren't getting that much value out of. I feel like this is really an area where if we design an appropriate program, I think kids would really get a lot more out of it, and it would serve as actually encouraging high achievement instead of just like a check mark for kids to kind of get through in their senior year.
Yeah, that is absolutely on the radar, as we've talked about, and it became, I think we mentioned that, we did these STEM school visits, this learning walk this last month with a number of our high school principals, and one of the consistent themes that we found among all of these high-achieving schools was culminating project types of activities. They looked different in every school, but they were inquiry-based, problem-based, project-based activities that kids participated in, and they were high quality and high rigor. And so we know that's part of the formula, and we know that we aren't doing it very well. So we're ramping up towards that. Tracy talked a little bit about that timeline, that we had to get after the kind of the credit-based stuff first. That CP is on the trajectory. We're also experimenting with a portfolio-based system at one school. There's some pros and cons of that, so it's on the radar.
Okay, great.
Tracy, do you want to speak to this? Thanks.
Just a quick add to what Chip said. The state board has made some pretty specific recommendations around high school and beyond and culminating project and linking those things together so students are doing some sort of research, internship, externship, something that connects to their post-secondary plan to make it really not an add-on but a relevant kind of meaningful thing for them. So when we start to begin to look at high school and beyond a culminating project, we're doing that together and looking at the state board recommendations and following along those lines.
Great, thanks. Yeah, I'm really glad to hear that. And we've been talking about it a bit, so I'm...
Yeah. I would like to suggest that, there's a missed opportunity since you're leaving the board to see these things that you're interested in come to fruition.
I'll still see them.
Okay, so noted.
I'm expecting to see the emails and questions still come firing away.
I
just had to throw a little dig in there.
That's okay. Every so often I'll bring up the culminating project just to remind us.
Yeah. You're channeling Ravi.
Yeah.
I'm actually trying to write it down because I know I won't remember next year, and now we won't have Ravi here to remind us.
I wrote it down, too.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Good, because Jackie can
6.
find what she writes.
No. We'll have to see.
Okay. EL 8 is under tab number 21, and this one is on instructional materials selection. CEO shall select textbooks and instructional materials that advance the achievement of the board in results policies, which essentially talks about an appropriate process, content, et cetera. This is in full compliance, and I do want to note that, when Chris came on the board, there were some public processes that he asked to be instilled into our processes, and we continue to use those and are continuing to modify our textbook and instructional material process to make sure that there's adequate input. So that one is seen as in full compliance.
Any questions for Chip on that one? If not, then we move to our debrief for the June 6th linkage session. And just to remind our public that after our board meeting on June 6th, the board recessed to meet with a group of 7th grade parents who will be the first students that will be impacted by attending high school as 9th graders. And we had a 20-some people, right? 15, 18, 12 people, is that what Diane said? I'm sorry, I miscounted. We had 3 tables full of people that were here, and they came from a variety of schools around the district. And yes, our own Barbara Martin was one of our parents that was there with us. And again, as with the 4th graders, I think we had some very good comments and thoughts that came from folks. So reflections from board members? Anybody want to comment on reflections that you had from that evening? One of them that they did was, we heard the suggestion several times that we should be talking to students, and I think that is a little bit in the plan here. But that did come up several times, that that it would be good to go and ask the kids in school what they think would be important hopes and concerns that they might have to make the transition a better.
Go ahead.
One of my major takeaways from the exercise was that, I mean, while parents had concerns, everyone pretty much was supportive of the change. I mean, by and large, right? People seemed both accepting and even approving of the change in school configuration. So the concerns were mostly around the transition year. For example, like the missed leadership opportunities came up a lot. Whether the schools would be ready, things like that. Communication was a concern, but it seemed like much more of a concern with the fourth grade parents, I felt. I'm not suggesting that we do a bad job on it, but it's just a difference that I noted.
One of the differences that I noticed was, again, communication. We'd heard that pretty consistently. But one of the differences between the fourth grade and the seventh grade was that in the fourth grade, they were really concerned about the transition for kids. In this one, I found a theme of worry about transition for teachers. That there was quite a bit of teacher concern that came up. Are the teachers really ready for this kind of change? That was interesting.
And I think, too, with the ninth graders moving up, discussion around curriculum and things that would be available and having all that in place differently than it is now that they're in junior highs was something that came up as well.
Yeah, my big thing that I remember, and I already mentioned it, was they really want more challenge, more slots in the honors and the gifted programs. They think our cutoffs are artificial. More support for alternative learning styles. Communication. They don't want the arts forgotten in the push for increased rigor. And again, this whole idea of pairing upperclassmen with underclassmen, so that, as you mentioned, 50% of the kids are going to be new, and it's going to make it more awkward with the schools. And then what are we doing just to prepare kids for this new change?
So I don't know, there are two things I wanted to mention here. The first is that someone at my table had the nerve to mention that there might be more to life than math and science. And while I may not agree with that particular constituent, the important message that I got out of it, actually, what was fascinating to me was the feedback on both levels, fourth and seventh grade, around communication. And in many cases, it's not even necessarily about communicating a result, because the district is working very hard to come up with we've got a year to go to implement. And simply communicating things like, when can we expect to hear the plans?
Yep.
So it's not about what is the plan, it's what's the timeline.
The timeline.
And that I thought was...
timeline thing was a piece that would alleviate a lot of problems if
it's explicit, it's something that helps people alleviate the anxiety of, I don't know when I'm going to hear my kid's going to show up in ninth grade, and I'm not going to know what's going to happen. So I thought that was very productive, and in retrospect, now it's kind of obvious, but I have to admit, I certainly didn't see it coming up.
Very good. Anything, Doug?
The only thing I'd add to that, which I think has been summarized really well, the only thing I would add is that there was some interest at our table expressed about the need for more differentiated instruction, which is, not news to any of us, but certainly a concern. And of course, again, in a time when resources are going the other direction, is a frustrating thing to deal with. But clearly there was some interest in and trying to attack that issue in some way. And I know that we're, through a variety of strategies, for example, the learning communities and things like that, we're trying to get at ways of addressing more effectively the needs of each student.
And I want to thank Matt Montebianco, who helped facilitate
he did a great
those. I
job.
think the way it was done and having the tables and letting board members sit at the various tables to listen, and staff, and for parents to be able to talk. And I think they felt very free to say what they needed to say, and then all the ideas were brought together at the end so everybody could hear what everyone else had said. So thanks to Matt for doing that and attending with us. Okay, anything more for Soup's report?
I just want to do a quick update. If many of you know that last week we had a substation fire.
Did we ever?
And it was far more of an event than we thought it was initially. I mean, the substation was like really on fire, knocked power out. We had several schools out. Traffic in downtown Redmond was snarling. And we had 80% of our buses that were in the bus barn, which is next to the substation, and then were therefore trapped inside of that area because it had all been blocked off by the Redmond PD. And I just wanted to really give some accolades to the city of Redmond. We called 911, the dispatch, and we got immediate cooperation from the city of Redmond such that the PD actually escorted our buses out of the bus barn in order to get them on their routes and get them to a place where they could get kids and get them home. And we are continuing to find outstanding leadership with the city of Redmond. Mayor Marchione is doing a phenomenal job and continuing to get cooperation like in this emergency event. And the other thing that I was pleased around was, when you have an emergency event, you can practice in a variety of ways, but you never really know what the emergency is going to look like. And this was one of those. Yeah. I happened to have I was in downtown Seattle meeting with King County council members at the time, and when this thing emerged, and I was coming across, and when I got to the office, all systems were running. Our emergency radio system was in place and working. Principals were being called. The team was calm and working out all the details. The city was on board. I mean, it just felt like a well-oiled machine. And so I just wanted to commend certainly Scott Emery and Janine Fogard and the operations folks. All the directors of school support were pitching in, getting their schools intact. The principals were on board. The city of Redmond was on board. And this was a real emergency because we had no clue it was coming. So I just wanted to report back to the board that some of those systems are actually working pretty well.
Very cool.
How good practice and planning come into play.
Let's update Doug.
Warms the heart.
Sure. As, of course, we know, based on the discussion we had on the budget tonight, the governor did sign the budget on the 15th, and we are now trying to eat the meal that was served up to us. And so...
indigestion along the way.
With a lot of Maalox.
Yeah.
This weekend, as I reported earlier, our state association had its legislative committee meeting in Olympia, and I was there for those 2 days. And one of the things that we did learn about, of course, was in quite a bit of detail from a spokesperson from one of the staff people from the state superintendent's office about the new MSOC, which is the stuff that we need. MSOC really is the acronym for the stuff that we need to run our schools, the supplies and the materials and all that sort of thing. And that's the new name for it. And so we're trying to get our heads around what all that is. Yeah, another thing that we might think about as a board is also whether we want to weigh in on an issue that I know is gaining some traction in WASDA, our association, and that is the whole issue about the state debt limit. As you know, we in our budget we pay a certain amount of our or we allocate a certain amount of our budget to pay for debt. And that's, of course, the same thing that happens at the state level. And historically, that hasn't gained a lot of interest, but because there is more and more debt being taken on, it is becoming more of an interest to folks that watch the state budget. And there was actually a bill passed this session, SSB 5181, which will set up which sets up a blue ribbon committee to look at the use of debt in the state and make recommendations on debt policy. We may want to weigh in on that whole matter, and so that's something to mull over during the summer as you think about adopting the budget in August.
And maybe, I don't know, do you have some information from the district that you can
Sure.
add to it before then?
Yeah,
So-
I think the one of the debt limit issues, of course, it impacts bond rating.
Yeah.
And so we work very hard to retain a premium bond rating, and if the state exceeds their debt limit to a point, it actually will lower the state's bond rating, which will then, by virtue of it, the state cascading
The
effect
domino
impact
effect,
ours.
right,
So we worry about that a bit.
So anyway, I just want to make sure that's on everybody's radar screen.
Okay.
Other than that, there's also an opportunity for us, Jackie reminded me this evening, there's an opportunity for us as a board to propose a resolution for adoption by the WASDA Resolutions Committee. The deadline's August 19th. Resolutions basically are
We have a
adopted
committee
by...
for resolutions?
Well, it's becoming an interesting, without going down a rabbit hole. WAS has historically used resolutions to just kind of establish its positions. Well, I think as you're suggesting, there's some discussion within WASDA as to whether that makes a lot of sense given the work we do on legislative positions and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But
Question.
but as of today,
They're still asking for
we
them.
still have resolutions. So if we ought to weigh in through a resolution on a permanent position, that's the route we can use to do that.
And we've done due diligence to announce that we could do that.
So this would be to have WASDA pass a resolution?
Right. And,
Resolutions, in my view, are basically legislative positions that have kind of become more permanent. And so they move from legislative positions to be considered periodically to resolutions that can just sit there until somebody in the state might somewhere maybe pay attention to what school board members are saying and do something.
So if you have any ideas, pass them to
yeah,
Doug.
that's right. And then just a couple of other things. One thing that Superintendent and I talked about before I went down is whether there was anything burning that he thought that might be useful to bring to the party, and that was a concern that once the spigot begins to flow again, I mean, we know from
Oh, we think it
from
will?
history in the state, it does.
Someday it will.
It does. I mean, we've had, if you go back to 1929 and go forward, things do
Someday.
ebb and flow. So when they start flowing again, the question is, what are going to be without, going into too much detail, what are going to be the rules of the game? Are strings going to be attached to that money as it begins to flow again? And so, anyway, the long and the short of it is that I'm going to draft a draft position for the Ledge Committee to look at that would address that issue. And
Well,
so-
isn't that what that bill is about with all the new categories for budgeting? It's supposed to direct us more money someday to closer to the actual costs of all these things?
No, that's the Bureaucrat Full Employment Act.
In light of recent legislative behavior where we've continued to see unfunded mandates jam down our throats, even with decreased funding, I can't imagine if there's any kind of additional money that there's not going to be significant strings attached to that money.
I think you're right.
I'm
With
sorry,
that-
I was trying to look up for a few seconds.
Dream on.
I think
know.
that I'd love to have you pound the pavement with our legislators about a 7-period day.
They don't listen to me at all. They just think I'm greedy.
Well, anyway, there was interest among members of the legislative committee to have something drafted that reflects that, so I'm going to be working on that.
Okay.
And finally, encourage you in September to attend the Legislative Assembly, which is September 23rd and 24th this fall in Pasco, sunny Pasco. And I'll be there as representative of our district, but we can certainly.
That's like, yeah, you represent us, Doug. That way we save all the money on the rest of us going.
And you take good care of us, too. Thank you.
Yes, we appreciate it.
So that's it, I think.
Okay.
Oh, and I was going to encourage you, if you want to see any of the details, at least from the WASDA perspective about what happened this session, go to wasda.org and look at the legislative stuff, and you'll get a better sense of the.
Well, you're right. Despite the budget, they still managed to pass an awful lot of school-related bills.
30 bills.
And WASDA's website is being revamped, so look for revamping. They're going to have some discussion boards and some other things on it.
Well, yeah, I don't know if any of you had an opportunity to watch the WASDA listserv.
Yes.
But talk about a circus.
Doug and I, yes. So that's going to go away, and they're doing some changes, and they're all up in arms, too. So, and you had something?
I just wanted to remind the board on August 31st, we're doing a district-wide picnic for all employees. It'll be a voluntary activity at Murray Moore Park, and we would love for board members who might be available. It'll be from 3 to 6 p.m. And it'll be
What's that date again?
August 31st.
August 31st.
You have an email or something, because I just did a survey.
Yes, I did send out an email. Yep, so I just wanted to remind board members that we would love to have you attend if that's possible.
I have a question about that, though. Are people bringing spouses or kids? Because
No, this is right after the workday. It's like at 3 o'clock, so this is really for employees.
employees,
Yeah.
okay, because I know there was no space for that on the survey, plus it's being funded by Marriott.
Yes, correct.
What?
Sedexa, right.
Exo Marriott, sorry.
It's not Maryland anymore.
Any
It's
board
Alexa.
follow-up items, future agenda items, debrief?
Oh, I was thinking about WASDA and thinking about the award that Chuck Collins received tonight, whether, and I don't even know if the deadline is passed, but
It
it might
is.
be interesting to see whether it'd be possible to make a presentation about some of our energy conservation stuff at the WASDA conference, but it may be past the
The
deadline.
deadline for this coming conference is passed.
Okay, well then,
And, you know,
Scratch it.
I've been at meetings with presentations. I can't remember if Chuck was actually doing it or if Forrest did it about the program. But I had to quickly step in and say he was not available for recruitment to other districts.
Glad to hear that.
But the program is spreading. You can go to WSU's Energy Program website and see all about the resource recovery program.
Great. Any comments?
I had just one quick one. I didn't go to WASDA last year. I think I'll go this year. They got Bill Daggett speaking, and I've never heard him.
yeah.
And it's in Bellevue this year.
And Diane Ravitch will be
Oh,
there.
they have a good
And I would
lineup.
love to hear her again after all that's gone on.
I heard her at AASA, and she was very interesting to listen to. as
Well, she was interesting years ago when I first heard her, but she has changed and things have changed, and So for once, they've got two speakers that have my interest right off the bat.
And they're close by.
And it's Bellevue,
Yeah,
yes,
it'll
it's
be in
Bellevue.
I really enjoyed at AASA when she spoke, and people have said that she has a profit motive for why she's speaking out now against the legislation that she wrote. And it was just classic, because she's like, I'm a 75-year-old woman. How long do I have to live? Do you think this is all about profit? I just want to do the right
Is
thing.
she that old
I think she
now?
may be 72, 73, but it was quite humorous.
But she is thinking about these things, and frankly, if she's willing to, I think a lot of people expected something different from No Child Left Behind.
Yeah.
I think, in fact, almost everybody.
Yeah, and they didn't get it. Graduations have taken place. We've got a number of students who graduated last week from all of our high schools, and they all went well, and several board members were able to attend them, and that was great. Groundbreaking has taken place at Rush last week and Bell this week for the new sites, so that's been some interesting things. So Bell's at 11, I think, on Thursday, if anybody is able to do that. Our next board meeting is August 8th we will have a work session at 5, and our board meeting is at 7 p.m. And remember, that will be a public hearing at that time for the budget.
And if accounting knows this, I'm not going to be here.
Okay, no Doug. Okay.
I'm going to be in a crummy, sunny spot.
No, okay, well, don't tell us about it now. Yes, I don't want to hear about it. You're, all right, great.
We retired people.
Yep.
That's all I have
those
to say.
and I'm not, we're not, we just travel. All those, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And thank you for our audience. Always love having you guys here.